forgot to start recording. So we're going to go ahead and start the recording there. Once again, I'm just going to introduce us. So I'm Whitney. I'm one of the lead developers and owners of Legacy. And I'm here with Lydia, the other developer. She is a scientist who designed all of the genetics in the game, and I do the actual implementation in terms of code, and then we both work on the artwork. Today, we mainly want to jump in. We have three main topics that we want to talk about, starting with some land management, ranch management changes, including some pretty big changes coming to the show system in V2, and then some breeding updates. So, all right, I'm just getting everything situated on my other screen so I can reference it. So yeah, we'll just jump into the land management changes. So land and barn and pasture management is going to work a bit differently in V2. Instead of, you'll notice that I use the term land because your ranches will now have acreage to them. So if we look at this property management section on the ranch page on the V2 site, you'll see that you have a total acreage, pasture acreage, barn acreage, and then your available acreage. So how it's going to work is all barns and pastures will have a required amount of... Oh, sorry, Namira. Sounds like Namira's not... Her service isn't working. Hopefully everybody else can hear us okay, though. Lydia, do you want to pull up the stream on your end and make sure... because if I do it, it's going to come across the stream and it'll echo.
I've got Twitch open.
Okay. Anyways, we'll go back to that. So the required acreage for building a pasture is going to be 1 acre per... Actually, let's roll that back a little bit. So there will be acreage required for each pasture and each barn. They have different requirements. The requirements are based on the number of horses that will be housed in the pasture or barn. And that brings us to another change in that pastures and barns will be somewhat dynamic in their occupancy. So you'll see we have our location management down here, and we have a max occupancy, which they're all the same at the moment. But if I were to edit, let's say pasture 1 and update, I don't know if this is going to work because I was messing with this earlier and it did not work. Yeah, there's a bug. Let's create a new one. So if I were to create a new pasture, or I'll just show you right here. You can see I have a variable value that I set when I create the pasture. Same with the barn, although the barn's a little bit different. It's in values of 10, between 0, well, 0 shouldn't really be an option, but between 10 and 50, whereas a pasture is between 1 and 100. And that's because they are now dynamic and can have anywhere between, although I believe... Was the pasture supposed to have a minimum? Yes, the pasture is supposed to have a minimum of 10. So this is supposed to be 10 to 100. So I'll make a note to fix that. So pasture will be anywhere between 10 and 100, and barn will be anywhere between 10 and 50 when you create them. However, the amount of space that you can include in a pasture or barn is dependent on the acreage you have available. And how that works out is in a pasture, you need at least 1 acre for every horse. So when you're purchasing, you could call the pasture, you could call this the acreage, but it's also the number of spots, number of horse spots. We'll just stick with horses, the number of horse spots, because that's what the barn is. It's the number of horses that can, capacity of horses. So for a pasture, it's 1 acre per horse. And for a barn, it's 2 acres per 10 horses. So if I were to purchase this pasture and I would want pasture 50 horses, I do have 100 acres available here. So it should let me do this. I'm just going to name this live stream test. It might not because there is a bug going on right now. But if I purchase that, and actually, I don't think it's the acreage that's the problem. I think I'm for some reason I'm negative in my balance here. Let me do something really fast. I'm going to switch to this so I can pull up our database without pulling it onto the live stream. And then I'll go back to the desktop then. I'm just going to check something and see if I can fix this really fast to be able to. I was messing about with all of this right before stream, and of course, that's when I find all the bugs. It's always right before stream. Okay, so if I do this and refresh, I should have. Why is it still negative? Oh, it's not. Okay, I just hadn't updated the UI yet. So I'm wondering if it'll let me do a pasture now. Again, we should be able to do 50 horses. Still saying I don't have enough acres, even though up here it says I have 100 available. So, okay, I'll have to look into that bug. But essentially, when you, I wonder if it'll let me do a barn. Nope. When you purchase, and you can add acreage. You can purchase it in any amount at any time, as long as you have the funds. So acreage costs, let me pull up that. Acreage costs $10,000 per acre. I think we switched that. I don't think that's right. Let me look this up really fast. Sorry guys, we're a little. Yeah, we changed that. It should be 5,000 per acre. That's the problem with development, is sometimes you make decisions but haven't implemented them yet. And so I'm looking at one, I have to double check both locations. But anyways, so if we do this now and we go ahead and try purchasing 50 acres on here, we should be able to, yep, we successfully purchased 50 acres. So you can see now we have 150. I don't think this is going to work still because I think I did. Okay, so I just purchased a 20 occupancy barn. So that's how that works. That wasn't the best explanation, but essentially, pastures require 1 acre per horse house in the pasture. Barns require 2 acres per 10 horses. And they now have customizable sizes. So pastures can have anywhere between a minimum of 10 to a maximum of 100 horses. So they can be anywhere from 10 to 100 acres. And barns can have anywhere from 10. This says 30, but I think we upped that to 50. So I'm gonna, because that's what the code does. And I think I remember having that conversation. Like I said, everything's still so dynamic as we're in development, that some of this, even just information that's just a few weeks old, can be out of date. One thing to note is that you will start with the same amount of space for horses in V2 as you did in V1. So you'll start with a 20 acre pasture and a 5 acre barn. Or no, 2 acres per 10 horse, 2 acre barn. So a 10 capacity barn and a 20 capacity pasture, and you'll start with 22 acres on your ranch. So you won't have any extra acreage to expand off the get-go, but you will be able to purchase more as you grow. Yeah, that is the land management change. So, and we'll come out with blog posts with more details on this stuff, guys. We just wanted to review, do a general review of this. That brings us to the meat and potatoes of the stream, and that is the show system changes. Wow, that is a mouthful. Before we get into what the changes actually are, I want to kind of review why we chose to make these changes. And the there are a couple main driving factors. So the probably biggest factor was that the show system as it stands in V1, while great and a great foundation to build on, just kind of ramped up the difficulty way too quickly. And so it left a lot of people, including ourselves, feeling stagnated fairly early in the game. We definitely want the game to be difficult, and we do want the high level, high tier horses to really be outstanding. So we wanted to find a way to tweak the show system to allow for that. And so what we have done, and there are a couple other reasons that we've done this, but I'm going to start with what we've done. The main thing that we've done, one of the main changes we've made is adding additional levels to the show system. So instead of having 4 levels, we are actually doubling it to have 8, starting with novice, and then going to junior, regional, reserve, grand, national, world, and then grandmaster. So those are the 8 levels. The system for advancing through levels is going to be pretty much the same. You reach a certain number of points in that level. You have to take first place at least once in a show with other players at that level. It can't be in a show with only NPCs. And you have to hit a score minimum for the specific discipline you're showing in at that specific level. So for instance, at the novice level, no Photoshop, don't do that. At the novice level, you have to reach 15 points, take 1 first place against other players, and have a score that is a minimum of between 30 and 40, depending on the discipline. So another change that we made to point out at this points is the points system changed on how you gain points. Instead of it being different for every level, like it is in V1, it's just going to be the same across all levels. So first place will always get 3 points, excuse me. Second place will always get 2 points, and third place will always get 1 point, and anything under that does not get any points. So, and that'll be at every level. So novice requires 15 points, junior requires 45 points, and these are cumulative. So it's not 44 points at the junior level, it is 45 points total. So you really only need 30 points at the junior level. And technically speaking, you could get 44 points at the novice level. And as long as you take first at least once at the junior level, or no, you wouldn't be able to because you stop gaining points. Yeah. So what happens is after 15 points at the novice level, you would stop gaining points in novice shows. Once you receive the novice title, you can no longer gain points at the novice level. You can only gain points at the junior level. So after 15 points, you could keep competing at the novice level if your horse is really only that good and you want to continue to be making money at that level, or you can move them up to the junior level and continue earning points and earning towards your junior championship title. And then you would go to regional, which is 90 points, so 45 points at that level, and then up to reserve, which requires 150 points. Grand would require 225 cumulative points. National will require 300 cumulative points. World requires 375 cumulative points. And Grandmaster is going to be 450 cumulative points. And we actually broke down about how many wins at each level that is. So for novice, if you were to only place first place and only get points from a first place, it's about 5 shows. Junior level would take about 10 first place, regional 15, reserve 20, and then grand, national, world, and grandmasters would all require about 25 first place at that level. These are subject to change and they're open as we actually test them in a live environment and figure out how difficult it really is. If there are horses that we believe should be national championship horses but just aren't able to earn the points quickly enough, we'll reevaluate these point level requirements. But right now, I think it's pretty well balanced. We really just a horse isn't going to be hitting World or Grandmaster Championship unless they are truly the best horses in the game, and it will be probably a few years of gameplay before we actually see any horses of that caliber in the game. But that's kind of by design. But we do believe that this will, to go back to some of the reasons that we're doing this, we do believe that it is going to move higher performing horses through the lower levels faster, because one, the points gained or earned per placement is the same across all levels, and two, there's fewer points required at the lower levels. It's going to spread out the competition a little bit because there's going to be more levels, and that brings us to the next change that we're making, and that is we are actually going to, except for obviously in-hand shows, but we are no longer going to have breed-specific shows in the game, in V2. Instead, all shows will be technically open shows. However, every show is going to have four divisions. It's going to have a mini division, a cob and pony division, a horse division, and a draft division. And these are going to be which division your horse competes in is going to be determined by its body type. So mini is obviously minis, cob and pony are obviously cob and pony, draft is drafts, and horse is everything else. So horse would include light, stock, warm blood, saddle, baroque, and that's it. And how that will work, if we go back to the actual game here, when you enter a show, you don't have to choose the division. It's going to automatically choose it for you. So why is there a server error? Gotta love it. I'll look into that later. So this isn't quite completely tweaked over to the new changes yet. But when I enter a horse, which I actually can't do from this page, but I entered this one just a little bit ago, it automatically puts it in so this is a light horse, so it automatically puts it in the horse division. Now, this is a barrel racing show, so there is no mini division for this show, because minis can't do any under saddle events in our game. But it does have a cob/pony division, a horse division, and a draft division. And the reason we chose to do this was to equalize the body type playing field. It's just, in V1, we gave minis like a multiplier score so that they could compete against horses. They'll still have the multiplier in order to compete against the NPCs, because the NPC scores will be the same across divisions. But it isn't, we just never felt like it was really very realistic for, hold on. Let me deal with this. Let me deal with this chatter. If I can remember how. Oh, there we go. Okay. Anyways, so back to what I was saying. Sorry, I had to get to the right tab here. Yeah, we will now have divisions instead of breed shows, except for in hand. In hand, obviously, is breed specific. And we already talked about the new titles, or I guess I didn't specifically talk about them, but the titles are just equivalent to each of these levels. So a novice title is, or novice championship has completed the novice level, junior championship, regional championship, etc. The last thing that we are changing is the training requirements. Let me get to that document here. And each level is going to have its own training requirement. And it's going to be a percentage of the overall training. So for instance, for a novice show, the requirement is only to train up to 15% of each task. So if I actually go into one of my horses and go to the training tab, and select a discipline, so let's go with shortcutting. And I need to update this in here, but right now we have a marker at the 50% and the 75% because originally we were going to have the minimum training be 50%, but we've actually changed it where we added more levels. So novice level and futurity shows only require 15% of each task to be trained. And in fact, any training over 15% of the task, so like for instance, if I were training a cutting horse and if I trained flag work to 50%, and introduce cows to 50% and everything else to 15%, only 15% of the training is going to be taken into account for the novice level. So I can train all of these tasks 100% and compete at the novice level. It's not going to give me any point advantage because it only takes into account up to 15% of the training, if that makes sense. Junior level requires 25%. Regional level requires 50%. So essentially what we mean by requires is that there's no penalty. How the training kind of works in the show score is we just take a percentage of the training requirement and multiply the score by that. So if you're at 10% of, I can't math that actually. So let's say you're at 5% training on all your tasks and you compete in a novice show, you're actually going to get about 33% of the max score that your horse could achieve at its specific performance stats, if that makes sense. So the max that you're going to want to train for novice level is 15. And then regional requires 50%, reserve requires 75. Everything above reserve, so Grand, National, World, and Grand Masters all require 100% training. The futurity is like level 1, is like novice. It only requires 15%. Breeders' Cup is only going to require 50% training. And then all the other specialty shows require 100%. So veterans, the specialty shows, and the, world shows are now a part of have been wrapped into the level system here. So there is no special, it's only futurity, breeders, veterans, and specialty now. Let me look at our notes really fast, make sure I hit everything. One of the reasons that we did make the training changes was to encourage people to start showing earlier. So most horses start showing at lower levels in real life before they're, especially like if you think about dressage horses, the lower levels don't require as much training. Speaking of dressage training will not be changing. So it is the only thing that where individual tasks are required per level. So everything else is just across all the tasks. You just want 15% per each task. Dressage is a little bit different, and we may tweak this. Where there's more levels, we haven't tweaked out which tasks are required for each level, but we most likely will. So it balances out closer to like the 15% training requirement that the other disciplines have. But yeah, so like for instance, at novice, you might only need like vertical flex, lateral flex, collected walk. And it might be we're still working this out, but it could be that you need like, for novice level, you need 100% vertical flex, 100% lateral flex, but only 50% collected walk. Or we might just do 100% of it. We haven't worked out dressage quite yet. So just something to be aware of. Do you have anything to add on the show changes, Lydia? Did I miss anything?
We could just say like with the divisions, the body type divisions and disciplines, it also kind of help with the fact that like because there's these divisions, there'll be that many times winners in each show and more titles and everything. So draft horses will get their own win, not competing with the horses, and then they'll be able to basically earn titles more easily, hopefully. So we'll have a lot more titles is kind of the hope with doing this. And this is also going to apply to like specialty shows like Futurities. There's going to be the body type divisions as well. So we'll have a lot more Futurity winners and other specialties as well.
So here's an example show, and this is kind of a mess because I haven't sorted all of the changes out. How this will actually look most likely is the results will actually be a tab here, and we'll have a tab for, well, this one wouldn't have a mini tab because it's a under saddle, but it would have like a pony cob, horse, and draft tab, and then you'd have the results. But as you can see here, there's 20th place placement. And here's like, there's one first, there's another first, and there's the other first. These horses they don't even show up on here. Interesting. I wonder what happened there. I'll have to look into that. I actually think that it's these three are actually the horses, and it's just showing unknown for some reason. So I got to look into this. We say this every live stream as we're demoing things. We've been doing a lot of development and not as much testing as, we do. As I develop, I do little tests, but we have actually like a major master testing document that once we get, because all of our systems are so intertwined with each other, I can do one-off testing as I develop things, but we really have to do bulk testing once most of it is most of the way over the finish line. We're very close to starting that testing, but that's why you see these little things, because I've really, the way I've developed V2 is to get the foundational stuff on the ground and, live in code so we can have a good foundation. And then I'm working out all these little things like, separating out the results and separating out the entries here will also be in 3 separate tabs. So you won't see a stock horse, a draft horse, and a pony in the same entrant list, essentially. But yes, so this draft horse did not compete against this paint or this fell pony. The Clydesdale competed against 19 other NPCs. Another point that we need to mention is the fact that there is still a maximum limit of 20 horses per division. So it's not per show anymore, it's per division. So once a division fills up, hits 20 horses. I guess that we could talk about some of the quality of life changes we made to the show system too, in that now, because a big reason that we made changed the shows to be division based instead of breed based, and although adding levels kind of added shows, but we actually were able to reduce the number of shows that are created. And I'm wondering if I could find that document really fast.
Yeah, we used to have an issue of just like with all these breed specific shows, the majority didn't get used. So we were bloating our database and making the shows run very slowly. So we're trying to fix that is by doing these within show divisions for body type, basically.
Yes. And here we go. I think I found the document. In V1, there were 13,200, an average of 13,200 shows per rollover. That means 26,400 shows per day were created. We did not need that many shows. Not every breed was being competed, but we had no way of knowing which breeds. In V1, we had no way of knowing which breeds. So we've made some changes to show creation. And what we've done is I've set it up so when a show is created, it does some checks. And it has a minimum number of shows that it creates. I'm just going to bring up the code really fast because I am actually pretty proud of coming up with this. I'm not going to go too much in the weeds here. Let me just pull. One thing is show creation will have its own rollover separate so that if rollover breaks, hopefully shows don't get missed like they often have in V1. So that is a huge boost. The other thing it does is when it creates the shows, it actually gets a count of how many shows the previous, I don't know if it was the previous rollover. I'm looking at it right now. So previous entrance, the previous day. I'm seeing a bug in this code that I'm going to have to fix. But essentially it checks the previous day and says how many people entered into shows the previous day. And it takes that and it says, okay, how many people or how many horses were entered into the barrel racing shows at novice level. And it takes that and it says, okay, if there's less than 40, we'll make 3 barrel racing shows at the novice level. Like it has a minimum. But if there was more, let's say there were 60, we're going to make 5 shows because obviously we need those extra couple shows. So it's really cool because it's much more dynamic. It's not going to create all these extra fluff shows. There's always going to be a minimum number of shows that we create just to be safe in case, you know, you might not have anybody competing in a discipline for a few months, but suddenly there's a huge boom in interest. And if you don't have, you know, but one show, you have to have some amount. Just double checking. So like, I think our default is a minimum of 4 per discipline at the novice level, 4 at the junior, and then 2 at regional reserve grand, and then 1 at the national world and stuff. And then we have a max. So the rollover is never going to create more than 30 shows at novice level, even if there is enough competition per se. And the reason it will only do a max of 30, even if there is enough competition, is because once a show fills, or once all of the shows hit 75%, at least 75% capacity for a given division, it will create a new show. So when I go and enter a show, and let's say there's 5 shows, and 4 of the shows are at 80% capacity, and 1 of them is at 70% capacity. But when I enter my 3 horses in that last show, it becomes at 80% capacity. When I enter my last horse that pushes it above 75% capacity, it will create another show. So that for the next person, there will be another show. So the show creation is much more dynamic, much more flexible, and based on the amount of players or amount of horses showing in those disciplines. So we can keep in theory, the idea is that we're going to keep the database from getting bloated with empty shows, but while still maintaining enough available shows to keep competition somewhat spread out so that we're not all always competing against the, I think that makes sense, hopefully. Chat is really quiet today, so I'm hoping that this is all coming across well. I know my delivery today hasn't been as smooth as it normally is. I'm a little distracted. But yeah, so those are the show changes, or the bulk of the show changes. I can't think of anything else that we need to add to that today. I don't know if you can, Lydia.
Reiterate that everything we've been talking about, the changes have been for disciplines. In-hand shows are not changing. We haven't really found a reason to change them. They seem to work well. So
yeah, except for the show creation process. Yeah. That it just, instead of taking into account the division, it takes account the breed. I actually think, yeah, it does. It takes the same minimum per level to do that. But anyway, okay. So we're actually going to move on. We actually have about half an hour or 20 minutes left because I have family in town and have to head out to lunch. Unfortunately, I double booked myself a little bit. Didn't know that they were coming to town until after we had scheduled this. So we're just going to keep pushing along. And I want to start with the breeding changes with one tweak. It's somewhat minor change code wise, but it is a bit of a big change functionality wise. And that is pasture breeding, injured horses in V2 will no longer pasture breed. That isn't 100% realistic because this is any injury, and obviously a horse with a cut is still probably going to be able to breed. Just coding wise, it's just simpler to make it any injury instead of having to like flesh out like the intensity of the injury. Maybe we'll look at doing that in the future, but essentially the reason we decided to do this change was to help overcrowded pastures for people who, and realistically, a horse that's not in good health is going to have a harder time reproducing. It's not impossible, and obviously in this case, you know, we're making it impossible. If there's an injury, they just simply do not breed. That's for coding simplicity's sake. But yeah, that is, so it's semi-realistic, but obviously we take it to a slightly unrealistic point. We don't like doing that unless it makes sense from a gameplay standpoint. There are instances
where, like, I'm sorry. It helps too, like if a player like leaves for a bit and accidentally leaves a stallion out in pasture. So if they injure themselves, it'll kind of help prevent their horses from just breeding and like
in mass,
breeding a bunch of great horses too much while they're gone and don't realize this is happening.
Yes, it's going to just slow that process down. Obviously, if you only leave one stud in pasture, the chance of injury is much smaller. But once you've bloated that and you've got 2 or 3 studs, the chance of even 2 studs, the chance of injury is very high. So any injured horse just gets pulled out of the queue, the breeding queue. This is a really fun, exciting feature and brings some realism to pasture breeding. But anytime a foal is pasture bred, or a mare is pasture bred, when there are at least 2 stallions in the pasture, the sire of the foal will be unlisted, unknown. It will be recorded on the database side, but you will not be able to see the name of the name of the sire unless you paternity test the horse. And the way that I don't think I have it coded. But it's not on my to-do list, so maybe I do have it coded. But if I do, I think it only shows up. I just kind of revealed something else. Let me check something. But essentially, you would go to, I'm not sure where it's going to live. Potentially the horse's page. I'm just checking really fast. I'm not as prepared at this stream as I normally am. Okay, I don't have it implemented on this page yet. Oh, yes, I do. Yes, I do. I remember doing it. Let me look. I absolutely do. I just need to change one thing. I love when past me does things that future me didn't know I did. I'm just going to change one thing on this horse. So this is horse ID 10, and that would be, I don't remember what table to do, but I promise this will be worth the little bit of a wait. So horse 10. I just got to make that flag false. Okay, and now if I refresh, in theory, it should show up. Let me just check something really fast. We may have to demo this in a blog post. But you could, do you know why it's not working with this one? Because it's an import. Do I have any bred horses? I think I do. Okay, sorry guys, I didn't think that through, but obviously imports, you don't know who their sire is anyways. So right now you can see the sire is stallion 9. But if I go to this horse and remove the flag that says that the parentage is known. And obviously you're always going to know who the dam is, unless something went very wrong. But if the sire isn't known, you'll see that now there's no history here. In the pedigree, it's unknown, but I can search sires. So I think you just have to type in. So like you have to have a suspicion of who the sire is. This is how it works in real life. It's not a like send off the DNA and they'll automatically tell you who the sire is. It's you have to send the DNA, a sample of the foal and a sample of the suspected stallion, right, Lydia?
Usually the dam as well.
Right. Right, because you need the dam's genetics as well to do this. But so I'm going to type in the name. So let's search for stallion. It's going to pop up this pop-up and give you a list of all stallions with that match that search term. So we know it's stallion. I think it said stallion 9 before. So let's just, let's do one that we know it isn't. Stallion 2 and hit confirm. And it's going to think for a second and it's going to throw a server error. And it's not going to tell me what the error is. So let's try doing. Okay, but essentially what it does is it pops up and it says, stallion is not a match for. I wonder why it's throwing a server error. I really need to not be getting in the weeds on this, but if it's something. Okay, it's something I'm gonna have to demo in a blog, I think, or in the next live stream, because it is throwing an error that I'm not sure about. And I could do some debugging right now. Oh, it's a really easy fix. I'm surprised that this didn't come up when I tested it. Okay, we'll try it again. We just need to give that a second. But essentially what happens is what I'm going to do is put in a stallion. I'm going to click search here and it should pop. Yeah, I might have to refresh. Okay. So obviously you have to have some notion of who the sire is. So I'm going to select Stallion 2 and hit confirm, and it should pop up and says Stallion 2 is not a genetic match for testing against sire. I don't know why testing again has a $sign in front of it. I do know why. Let's fix that, but it's not gonna. So then I can search again, and the one thing that we didn't do, I'm not going to track who you already tested, so we're going to leave that up to you guys. But obviously now I know I tested Stallion 2, so I'm going to test Stallion 9 and hit confirm. And it is a genetic match, and so you'll see that went away and the pedigree updated, and now Stallion 9 is in the pedigree. And any of Stallion 9's, if it wasn't an import, this wouldn't all say unknown. I think I tested multiple generations at one point, but I don't know where I did that. So anyway, yeah, so that's a really fun, exciting change. And just a fun, more realistic spin on pasture breeding. And I still see our chat is pretty quiet. So the next thing I want to talk about is pregnancy termination, and on two avenues. One avenue is, one second. One avenue is for underweight mares. So a major issue that came up in V1 for players was mares becoming underweight and having no recourse. And so one way to combat that is if a mare is too far underweight, and I think we said anything less than thin. So anything, trying to remember our scale. I can't remember exactly where the cutoff point is off the top of my head at this moment.
I think it's thin body weight or lower.
Okay. I wasn't sure if it was under thin or thin and under. Yeah, it would be anything under moderately thin. Yes. So emaciated, very thin or thin, have an increasing chance of aborting the foal or losing the foal, just like they would in real life. So the idea behind that, and the chance will be low at thin, and it will get worse. The chance will become higher of losing the foal the worse their condition is, the worse their weight is. So that is one recourse. And again, this is to help players who get, it's happened to me and I know better. I know how everything works. So it's easy to happen where you forget a mare, especially if you have Carl, the ranch manager. I often would forget to remove mares from showing while they were pregnant. So this just, if the horse, the idea behind it is that, yes, you lose the foal, but at least you maybe save the mare. Because once the mare, because there is no feed that can out-calorie pregnancy, the best you can do is maintain on a pregnancy. So, and obviously on the other end of the spectrum, if a horse becomes too fat while pregnant, there's risk at that. But you can exercise them. There is recourse in the game. You can lower their feed intake and such. But right now, there is no recourse for if they become too thin. We didn't want to. There was no way to balance it out by adding another feed option in the game, because then that allows players to take advantage of that for other scenarios, such as showing more than is realistic and stuff like that. So we chose to go with the spontaneous loss of pregnancy. The other thing is you will have the option to terminate pregnancy within a short time frame of pregnancy. I believe we said any time within the first trimester. We made it a little bit longer than what's realistic in real life, because obviously our time frame is faster than real life. In real life, you'd have, let's say, a month, or at least a few weeks from finding out a horse is pregnant to being beyond the point of termination. In the game, if we were to do that, it would really only be one day, real life day. So we wanted to give you a couple real life days to be able to make that decision. And there could be many reasons. It could be an accidental pasture breeding, or maybe you breed a mare who's already underweight. After the first, I believe it's the first trimester, that we put the limitation on it. I don't have it here in my notes, unfortunately, but after a certain point, you won't be able to. But if a horse is, for instance, under condition, there is a chance they will lose the pregnancy anyway. It just won't be an option to force it after that point. Okay, so enough on the pasture management and stuff. Now we get into the really fun and exciting breeding updates. And the first one is something I'm going to hand over to Lydia, but it is semen sorting. So I made this fun diagram, and I'm going to let Lydia explain it and explain what semen sorting is.
All right. So apologize in advance if you hear a cat meowing in the background. My cat Simon thinks I'm talking to him, so you might hear that. But we're adding a couple more advanced assistive reproductive technologies to the game. One of them is semen sorting. That will be in V2. So there's this really minute and cool thing you can do with biology in order to increase your chances of getting a specific gender in your foal. And that comes to this technology called flow cytometry, which basically you make cells glow and you run them through this machine and it can pick up slight differences in how they're glowing, and sort them for you. And with sperm will either carry an X or a Y chromosome. If they're so, an X-bearing sperm will make a female embryo, a Y-bearing sperm will make a male embryo. The X and Y chromosomes are not equal in DNA content. So the X chromosome is a lot larger, the Y chromosome is a lot smaller. And if you stain the DNA with a fluorescent dye that doesn't hurt anything, the X-bearing sperm will glow a bit brighter. So you run them through this machine, and this flow cytometers nowadays are so sensitive that they can detect that little 3% increase in fluorescence between the X-bearing sperm, and then they'll sort them out for you so that you have a tube of Y-bearing sperm and X-bearing sperm, and then you can, with pretty high accuracy, it's not 100% accurate because it's a very small margin of error. So you'll have about a 90% success rate for getting a male embryo if you say use the Y-sorted sperm, or a female embryo if you use the X-sorted sperm. So we're adding this to V2. You will now have the option to sort semen when you collect it, and you will receive a random number of straws that are X or Y bearing. And then you can use that to increase your chances of getting either a filly or a colt. Like I said, it won't be 100% chance. But yeah, it's a new little modern technology that we're adding to the game that I don't think I've ever seen in any other horse sim game. But
yep, and I'll just show you an example. You know what? Let's show you two examples. So let's go back to my horses and let's collect a stud and show you the process of actually doing the semen sorting, and then I'll show you what that looks like. So when the semen collection looks pretty much the same, you've got, you choose how many times you want to collect the horse, but you also have this test gender thing, and it does cost a little bit extra. I can't remember the exact price. Let me see if it's in one of my tables that I have pulled up. Yes, so it's an extra $150 per. I can't remember if that's flat or per. I think it's per collection. Yeah. So normally it would be, or no, it's not an extra. It is $150. So normally it'd be $50 per collection, but when you sort the gender, it increases that to $150 per collection, I believe. I'd have to double check the code. It may increase it to 200, but I'm pretty sure it's 150. So you can choose how many times to collect. So let's collect 10 times, and you just click test gender, and then you're going to hit collect, and it should. This horse doesn't have his groundwork training done, so I can't collect him. But essentially, it'll just pop up and say, yes, it was collected. Why doesn't it have its groundwork training done? This must have been before I fixed imports. Let me see if I can find one that does. We need to refresh the test server for sure, and get fresh test data in here. Let's see if I can do it with this one. Actually, just look at his training. Groundwork. Okay, yep, this one should work. So yeah, let's do 10 again, and we're going to test the gender, and we're going to hit collect. It's going to think for a second, and then it's going to say we successfully collected 40 straws from Stallion for a total of $700. That's $70 per. I collected it. That's might not be right. That amount, because that would be $70 per. I'm gonna have to look into that. Oh, but I had to buy this. I had to buy this semen tank for $200, so $500. So I would only be $50. Okay, so it didn't change the price, but it needs to. So that's a bug I need to fix. Hopefully, you guys are okay with how open we are about bugs that we run into, because I don't figure there's a point in being like, oh, that's a bug, but don't tell them. It's still in development. There's going to be bugs. But as you can see here, the straws come out with this little gender icon. And so if we scroll down to this guy's, so yeah, for instance, dev testing here, we have 92 straws, but it doesn't have a gender icon, so they weren't sorted. Whereas here, we collected the stallion 10 times, which means we should have got a total of 40 straws, which we did. 26 of them were female sorted and 14 were male sorted. And it's going to come out to an average of about 50-50, but obviously odds in not statistics. What is the math science that I'm trying to say?
Sample sizes can affect, the average.
Yeah, exactly. But essentially, so what I would do then is if I wanted, let's say I'm shooting for a mare, I'm going to go ahead and take 12 straws and I'm going to breed dev testing 2. And there is a 90% chance, well, that mare can't be bred currently. I'm pretty sure I know why. It doesn't matter. You don't actually have to breed them, but yeah. Anyways, you're seeing some of our fancy new toasting system that gives you the errors, which I am in love with. It's a great quality of life improvement from V1, which didn't always properly tell you why things weren't working, even though in this case it is, important, like it shouldn't be working. So if I test this one was successful. So yeah, this is one of my favorite things about V2 is this new toasting system here that gives you the success or failure message and essentially explains why you couldn't do something. So if we go back to dev testing 2, the reason dev testing 2 can't be bred, I believe, should I talk about the pregnancy issue? Have we revealed what causes that? I'm trying to say it without saying it.
I'm not even sure what you're talking about. I'm sorry.
Oh, look at Facebook. Look at your Facebook messages. While she does that, I'll finish saying what I was saying in that this breeding has instead of a 50-50 chance of getting a filly, would have a 90% chance of getting a filly. Because Lydia said, okay, I thought we had. Like Lydia said, it's not a 100% accurate process, but it is fairly accurate. So, yeah. Okay, so then let me look at the other thing we need to talk about. So semen sorting is really exciting, and we're excited to have that feature. The other exciting feature is you're going to see in this reproductive tab. It's not, so I'm in the middle of working on this view of it. Oh, I was already in the, you may see here we have an embryo storage. So yes, embryo collection is coming to V2, but before you guys get too excited, we are limiting it to subscribers only. So it will be a part of the subscription. Players who have a ranch subscription can collect mares on that ranch and use the embryos and implant them in other mares. This is really ugly right now because I'm still in the process of implementing the actual embryo management, but the embryo collection system is in place. So I think if we go, I'll have to do some fiddling with who did I breed? I think it was Dark Horse that successfully took. We go to Dark Horse's page and go to breeding tab. The mare can't be, here's another quality of life change. So when a mare can't be bred, instead of it just not having the breeding option here, obviously this instabreed is a testing purposes only, will not be in the game. So if a mare can't be bred, although I think if it's already been bred, I'm not going to show this, but there will be a mare can't be bred currently, which actually brings me, I'm going to bounce around here a little bit. The reason dev testing couldn't be bred is because dev testing has an injury. Go to the health tab. Is that going to show because I haven't implemented it there? If I go here, was it dev testing? Hold that thought. I just need to check something. Because if dev testing has a full, she shouldn't have come up on. No, it wasn't dev testing. Okay, so that shouldn't have come up, so that's a bug. Finding all the bugs. So let's go back to my horses, and I need to actually go to horse 20. Mare 20. So mare 20 actually has an injury that prevents breeding. And this is a unique injury just to mares, and it's called perennial. Is that how I say it? Laceration?
Perennial.
Okay. And that actually is a result of foaling twins. So there is a chance that a mare can have be injured during twin foaling, and it if a mare is injured, they this is the only type of injury that they would receive during that. They will be unable to be bred until this is healed, which I believe we said it was about 3 months.
It was like 3 or 4 months. I forget
Yeah.
exactly.
I think it's variable, so I think a minimum of 3 months. But yes, that's something to be aware of. And then you could also see like mare can't be bred currently. This is what it'll look like without this instabreed. This is what a mare that can't be bred will look like. I may add in more specific details on why they can't be bred. Besides just this one being a perennial laceration, I'm not 100% sure. Obviously, the only reason they wouldn't be able to be bred is if they're in between. Besides a perennial laceration would be if they're already bred, which in which case they'll show this other view here. Which again, this might be going, but obviously this horse has already been bred, and it is in fact pregnant. So if they're already pregnant, you're going to see this, so you'll know that that's why. So really, the only time that this should show without the perennial laceration information is if they're just in between breedings. So obviously, mare can't be bred every single rollover. You have to. It's only been bred once a month or every other rollover. So I don't know that this needs more detail than this, but if it becomes confusing, we're open to adding that detail. Oh, perfect. Here you can actually see. So this this mare is in the first trimester, and they have 1 month termination time remaining. So I could actually terminate the pregnancy here. So I'm glad I actually came to this mare so we can show you that option. I'm not actually going to click it, but you can see that it's there. Whereas if I go to this mare, this is not a mare. This is a stallion. I think it was the next one. Okay, this mare can't be bred currently. Let me go back to Dark Horse. I think I'm gonna have to flip a switch on the database side on Dark Horse to be able to demo what I want to demo. Yes. Okay, so let me just do that really fast, and then I can show you how you would collect an embryo. If I have it, yes, I have it coded because I have embryos in collection. Okay, so this is. This is horse, what, 15? So let me just grab that. Sorry, guys, it's just taking me a second. Oh. Come on, database. There we go. Okay, so I need to just flip a couple flags around and say that this horse has no longer been bred, but is pregnant. And if I do that, and the date bred is 499. I don't know what the date is in game. July or 41, which now I got to do math. We're 98. Okay, so it should be good. Yes, so this mare should say they're pregnant now. So the window to, I missed something. What did I miss? Oh, yep. I have to mark them as preg checked. So we don't know that they're pregnant because they haven't been preg checked yet. Lots of little lots of moving parts in the background on this game, which I'm sure none of you are surprised about. Okay, so now if I refresh, there should be the option to okay, July year 41, July. Okay, it needs to be moved back one. That's something you'll never have bred the mare on, or the mare will never show as pregnant on the same month that it was bred, because it won't be determined until it won't be revealed. But now you can see I'm in the first trimester. I have 3 months termination time remaining. I should have, is it 1 month in? I thought it was 2 rollovers in. Or is it 2 months in that you can do it, Lydia?
Why is that? I don't recall.
Maybe I didn't actually implement the button. I thought I did. Let me check something really fast, guys. I thought it was. Oh, that's why. It's because it's 1 rollover. Let me just check something, guys. Thanks for your patience. I know that the stream has been a little bit chaotic today. I'm not quite as organized and on top of things as I normally am. In part due to the fact that this stream was meant to be streamed a few weeks ago and I got sick. And in part because I started a new job 3 weeks ago and that's been crazy. It's just been a busy weekend this weekend as well. Okay, here we go. Here's the button. So it needs to be pregnant, project. I see what I did. The way I did it was smarter than the way I was thinking I did it. I just gotta find the right field here, guys. It'll only take me a second. Okay, now I should be able to collect the embryo. You can only collect the embryo, the rollover after you find out the pregnancy test results. So the rollover that you get the notification that the mare is pregnant is the rollover that you collect the mare. We know that's a really tight window and it's hard to fit that, but that's actually more gracious of a window than even real life has. But essentially I just click this collect button and then I successfully collected embryo from Dark Horse. And then if I go to my reproduction tab and go back to embryo storage, you'll see I have, again, this is going to be much prettier, but I have Dark Horse's embryo here, bred with Stallion 19. It's a mare because we use gendered semen, so we know it's a mare, or it should be 90% chance of it being a mare. And then the rest of this isn't implemented, but essentially you would be able to implant this into any open mare or discard it. The functionality isn't quite there yet for those, but and then yeah, that's it. But like we said, this is a sub-only feature. At this point in time, we decided it was best if we limited access to it and made it a sub perk. And there will be no selling of them because it's a sub-only feature. If we get to the point where we have enough people subbed to the game and that there is like value to creating a sales situation, just like with semen, then we are open to adding that. But at this point, with the fact that we only have like 20 maybe sub branches, maybe 30, the market for it just wouldn't be worth anyone putting it up on a market for only, the odds of within that 30 players of having a player that is breeding the same breed that you are and have all that. We may do an exchange system later on in V2, not in the first launch of it, but at some point where you can just do like a private trade. But as far as public sales, I just don't see the point in doing that at this point in time. But yeah, that is everything we have. I don't see anybody in the chat really right now. If you have questions, feel free to let us know. We'll give it just a minute, but I am actually over time. So actually, I'm going to say we're not going to give it a minute for the Q&A. We will be available in Discord to answer any questions, though, and on the comments on the YouTube video, as well as on our Facebook page. So we're going to probably just call it here. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with us today. Hopefully you're as excited with all these changes as we are. And hopefully my presentation style wasn't completely out of left field today. But yeah, we'll have some blog posts going in more detail on all of this stuff in the coming weeks. So thank you guys.